Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. To start off our day, may I invite everyone to stand for the opening prayer and national anthem to be led by Miss Maria Karen Hapuchdi Arroyo.
Let us put ourselves in the holy presence of God as we say in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our loving Father, we come here today to give honor to your name and to thank you for the gift of life and the abundance of blessings you have bestowed upon us. We also give thanks for the sunny and beautiful weather you have given us today. As we all gathered here, graciously loving Father, we humbly ask for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we conduct today's travel talk. Help us to engage in meaningful discussions, fill us with your grace, and continue to remind us that all that we do here, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of your name, and for the service of humanity. These we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen. Our Lady of Montserrat, Saint Benedict, Saint Bede, that in all things, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please remain standing for the national anthem.
Ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Please be seated. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of the Tourism Knowledge Center's Travel Talk. Before anything else, we would like to acknowledge the presence and support of our guests this morning, our esteemed participants from the government sector, the Department of Tourism, the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, the tourism officers from the municipality of Pateros, tourism officers for the city of Muntinlupa, and officers and members of the following associations: the American Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines, the Tourism Industry Board Foundation, faculty and students from the following schools and universities: San Beda College, Alabang, Asia Pacific College, De La Salle University, Dasmariñas, Jose Rizal University, Lyceum of the Philippines University, Cavite, Lyceum of the Philippines University, Manila, Manila Titana Colleges, Our Lady of Fatima University, Valenzuela, Pax College of Aeronautics, Southville International School and Colleges, University of Perpetual Help System, Dalta, and St. Michael's College of Laguna. Thank you all for your presence here today. Without further ado, I would like to call on stage Reverend Father Gerardo Maria de Villa, OSB, President of the San Beda College, Alabang, for his welcome remarks.
The Honorable Jerry Treñas, Mayor of Iloilo City, Mr. Nigel David, Regional Director for Asia Pacific and Middle East, World Travel and Tourism Council, Mr. Robin Yap, Chairman Emeritus, the Travel Corporation, and Deputy Chairman, Tourism Management Institute of Singapore, Dr. Michael Angelo Cortez, Associate Professor, Ritz-Meikan Asia Pacific University, Japan, Ms. Narzalina Lim, Advisor, Iloilo Economic Development Foundation, and former Department of Tourism Secretary, Attorney Solfia Boladura, Director of Manila Tourism and Cultural Affairs Bureau, our distinguished guest speakers. To Raha Travel and Tourism Knowledge Center, Ms. Eileen Clemente, Chairman and President, Raja Travel Corporation, Mr. Rolando Canizal, Executive Director, Tourism Knowledge Center, and retired DOT Undersecretary. To my colleagues in San Beda College, Alabang, to all the students representing the various schools in the South participating in today's travel talk, dear organizers of this prestigious event, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure as Rector President to welcome you all to this series of travel talks hosted by San Beda College, Alabang. I am delighted to see many students participating in this travel talk because they are the future of the success of tourism. Since they will be at the forefront, it's best that as they are being trained to showcase what is best in their respective areas in the future, we would like to acknowledge the importance of this event. With our speakers here to experienced and seasoned in the tourism industry to share insights and ideas on how best to prepare and welcome visitors, not so much anymore perhaps in the countryside, but I noted the theme of today's travel talk, cities and urban centers. I say this because I know many of you have seen our own advertisements of our country in terms of how we invite people to come. And it's always, mostly, about 80%, the beaches, you know, the countryside, but rarely do we invite them to see and experience the warmth and hospitality and the beauty of our urban centers. So I think it's very important that today's travel talk will focus on cities and urban centers and their readiness for tourism. So once again, I thank you for your presence, and I warmly welcome you to San Beda College, Alabang. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you, Reverend Father De Villa, for the warm welcome. May I now call to the stage Ms. Eileen C. Clemente, Chairman and President of Raja Travel Corporation, for an inspirational message.
I don't know how inspirational I can make a talk be following Reverend's speech already. But thank you so much for the support, San Beda, for holding our third travel talk. It's just been growing and growing, and San Beda is one of our pioneer partners in setting up the Tourism Knowledge Center. The idea being that we would change your lives in tourism and that tourism can be used as a force of good. So that's our main message. And I know most of the students here today may be here because it's part of your class, but think of it as a privilege because you have very excellent and distinguished speakers today who flew in from all over the different parts of the Philippines and the world. And you have to look at their LinkedIn, Facebook, and whatever other social media to know their passion. Sometimes within a classroom, we learn about theories, we learn about success stories, but here are people who actually have lived it, who have shown their passion. We know that technology is here, but at the same time, you can never lose the heart. So again, let us all use tourism as a force of good and let their examples lead the way. And with that, good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clemente. I would now like to introduce our panel moderator, Dr. Maria Cherilyn Rodolfo. Dr. Rodolfo is a consultant in tourism and tourism infrastructure of the Asia Foundation, a member of the Board of Advisors of the Asian Institute of Management Andrew Tan Center for Tourism, and member of the review board of the Raja Travel Corporation's Tourism Knowledge Center. Let's all welcome Dr. Rodolfo.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Good morning to everyone. I'd like to formally introduce our panelists for the first session entitled Measuring the Preparedness of Cities for Tourism Growth. So we're very fortunate that we have with us our first panelist, Mr. Nigel David. He is the World Travel and Tourism Council Regional Director for Asia Pacific and the Middle East. Mr. David's career spanned 35 years in the travel and tourism sector, during which he has held a wide range of leadership roles for a range of large multinational companies across the globe. His last role prior to joining the World Travel and Tourism Council was as the Chief Executive Officer of Evivo, a technology startup focused on the hospitality industry, culminating in the sale of the company to Investcorp Technology Partners. He will present on global cities readiness for tourism growth. Our second panelist is Ms. Narsalina Lim, who is President of Asia Pacific Projects Incorporated, a tourism and hospitality consulting company which specializes in tourism strategic planning, marketing representation, training, and feasibility study preparation. Her company formulated the National Tourism Development Plan of 2011 to 2016, which has since been updated, and we now have a successor plan, the National Tourism Development Plan 2016-2022, and both are currently being implemented. Ms. Lim served as the Secretary of Tourism under President Corazon Aquino and President Fidel V. Ramos. Before her appointment as Secretary, she was Undersecretary for Policy, Planning, and Development. She will present on facilitating new tourism investments in cities. Our third and final panelist for this first session is Dr. Michael Angelo Cortez, who holds a degree on Doctor of Business Administration and is currently full professor at the Rutsemekan Asia Pacific University, Beppu, Oita, Japan. He also serves as a Deputy Director of the Center for Asia Pacific Studies of the Rutsemekan Center, and he is also Managing Director of the journal and serves as Conference Chair and organizes a number of conferences, not just in Japan, but also in other parts of Asia. He serves as editor-in-chief of the Asia-Pacific Business and Economics Research Perspectives, a biannual peer-reviewed journal. And he has written a lot of works on globalization, trade and services, labor migration, accountancy, and business process outsourcing. And I'm actually very happy to see him again because the last time I saw him was in 2005 when we were actually doing the Japan-Philippine Economic Partnership Agreement research. His presentation is all about integrating culture and heritage in defining the readiness of cities for tourism. So let's give a round of applause for our three panelists, and I'd like to call on Mr. Nigel David to deliver his presentation, to be followed by Ms. Lim and Dr. Cortez.
Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me, yes? So, first of all, can I just have a show of hands for everybody from Beda College? Okay. A show of hands for everybody that's currently studying tourism and international studies. So it's the same group. Okay. So the reason I ask is because it takes me back 35 years ago. I studied, first of all, I studied international studies for 3 years, and then I studied tourism management for 1 year on a postgraduate course. And as you're about to embark on your careers, I would just like to say you've got a great career ahead of you. The travel and tourism industry is a great place to work, and it's been good experience for me. Okay, so that's me. Oh. Okay, so I just want to talk for about 15 minutes, hopefully, about 3 or 4 subjects. I want to start by just giving you an introduction to the World Travel and Tourism Council, who we are, what we do, and that's the organization that I've worked for the last 8 years. I then want to share with you some numbers, some of the economic data which the Council produces, not just for the world but also for the Philippines. So we have some really interesting facts and figures about the size of the travel and tourism industry for the Philippines. I then want to come on to talk in more detail then about the tourism report on the readiness of cities to support future tourism growth. And then if there's time at the end, I just want to show you a short video, 2-minute video, of an event which we hope to host in the Philippines in the next couple of years. And if we're successful with it, I would like to invite everybody in the room to attend that event. Okay, so just to start, I realise I've got this upside down. Just to start, I want to talk about the World Travel and Tourism Council. So the World Travel and Tourism Council is the global body to represent the private sector of the travel and tourism industry. It was formed about 30 years ago, and the 4 founding members are pictured on this slide. So that was American Express, American Airlines, British Airways, and the Marriott Corporation. And the gentleman in the bottom right-hand corner, Bill Marriott, who's now in his 70s, is still actively supportive of the World Travel and Tourism Council. We were formed to really promote fair economic policy for the sector and the long-term sustainable growth of the sector, something which I know is dear to the hearts of the Philippine tourism policymakers. These are an example of some of our members, so hopefully you will recognize the names of the corporations, and hopefully you will recognize the names of some of the CEOs, the presidents, the chairs. It's a very influential group of individuals who represent all the different components that make up the travel and tourism sector. I think if you add up the total turnover of our 170 members, it's $680 billion. So this is a very powerful group that can help shape the future of our sector, working with governments around the world. Delighted to say we have 2 members from the Philippines. So we have Eileen, Clemente, and also Venus Tan, who is the Chief Operating Officer for the Tourism Promotion Board for the Philippines. So they're very active in supporting the Philippines within the context of the World Travel and Tourism Council. So one of the things that WTTC does is produce data, research. We're essentially at our heart a research organisation, and we partner with an organisation called Oxford Economics in the UK to produce every year economic reports for 185 countries and 25 regions of the world. This data records the GDP, jobs, investment and exports for travel and tourism. And I'm going to share you some of those figures in a minute. But we also produce with our partners and our members some individual research reports on a particular topic. The reason I hold this report up is because this is really the theme of this event today. So this report, which we did in conjunction with one of our partners, JLL, Jones Lang LaSalle, is entitled Global Cities, Readiness for Tourism Growth. And I'm going to come and talk about some of the findings of this report. But if anybody wants to see the full report, you can download it from the WTTC website. Okay, so I just want to share some of the numbers. First of all, looking at the global size of the global travel and tourism industry. So if you look at the numbers along the top, first of all, you're looking at the growth figures for gross domestic product, the GDP, the economic value of the output of travel and tourism. And you can see that the total economy last year grew at 3.2%. So that's the global growth of GDP. If you look at the global growth of travel and tourism, it was 3.9%. And that meant that travel and tourism accounted for about 10%, 10.4% of the total global economic output across the world. The graph along the bottom shows that for the last 8 years, travel and tourism as a sector has been outgrowing all the other sectors of the total value, if you like, of the economy. And you can see that it supported, in 2018, 319 million jobs across the world, and that was 1 in 10 jobs. The most important thing, though, I think last year, of all the new jobs that were created in the world, 1 in 5 of them were in our sector. So the students that are studying tourism in this room, you are in one of the fastest growing, most dynamic and significant sectors of the modern century. If you look at the whole of the Asia-Pacific region, the numbers are similar. Around 10% of GDP is delivered from travel and tourism. Just under 10%, 9.3% of all jobs employed in this region are in travel and tourism. The economy at an overall level in Asia-Pacific grew at 4.9% last year. Travel and tourism grew at 6.4%. So travel and tourism is outgrowing the overall economy. It's one of the most dynamic sectors. And if you look at the Philippines, this shows the economic impact of travel and tourism, and it's an incredible story. Almost a quarter of the economy of the Philippines is travel and tourism. Now that's the total value. Not only is that the direct impact, so all the money that is spent when people come into the Philippines or domestic travelers travel directly on hotels, resources to do with travel and tourism. It also includes the indirect impact, which is all the services that are provided, all the food, all the beverages, all the linen for hotels, etc. And also the induced effect. So anybody that works in the travel and tourism sector, it also counts their spending as well. It's supported around 20%, so just over 1 in 5 jobs in the country are employed in travel and tourism, and that's 8.3 million jobs. That's in the top 5 countries of the world in terms of total number of jobs employed in the sector. So after China, India, USA and Indonesia, Philippines comes 5th in terms of the number of jobs employed. And you can see once again 6.3% growth last year for the overall economy, but travel and tourism grew by 8.9%. So it's continuing to grow faster than the overall economy. We're just about to release some research, and in fact, you are the first people to see this. So every 2 years, we benchmark for about 25 countries, and the Philippines is one of those countries. We benchmark how does travel and tourism compare to other sectors in the economy, and we look at 8 other sectors. If you look at the total global picture for benchmarking, I think travel and tourism is the 5th largest sector in the world. But in terms of the Philippines, you will see it is the largest sector. It's bigger than all other sectors in the economy. The dark blue line is the direct impact, the gross domestic product, and then the shaded line takes you up to the total impact, including indirect and induced spend. But even at both levels, at direct spend and total spend, you will see that this is by far the single biggest sector in the economy. Okay, what this shows is what's it going to look like in the next 10 years. So we also produce predictions. So this is at the global level, and you can see that given that travel and tourism is growing faster than the overall economy in the world, in the next 10 years it's going to grow to account for 11.5% of the total economy, 1 in 9 jobs, and that's an extra 100 million jobs that are going to be created over the next 10 years. 1 in 4 of all new jobs will be in our sector across the world. We also know that in terms of the international travellers, that's going to increase from 1.4 billion to 1.8 billion, and in terms of air travellers, that's going to almost double. What that does is to create huge pressures and opportunities for our sector and for countries around the world. So one of the things that WTTC have done is to research with our members what do they see as the 3 most important priorities in order to take advantage of this anticipated growth. So the first one looks at security and travel facilitation, and that's all about visas, and use of biometric technology to speed up the flow of people, facial recognition, fingerprints. The whole managing crises, the world wherever we are, there's natural or man-made crises, and it's important that we are ready and equipped to deal with those and to respond to those crises. And the Philippines is particularly good and very resilient when they have some of the natural disasters you've had recently. And then perhaps the most important aspect is the whole sustainable growth agenda. Okay, so I just want to now turn to the cities information, the cities report. Okay, so currently 55% of the world population live in cities, and that's forecast to grow to 68% by 2050. That's an extra 2.5 million people are going to be living in urban sites in the next 20 years or so. Now, there are already high levels of city tourism, 1.4 billion people crossing borders in 2018. Of those, 45% wanted to visit a city. Money from tourism helps the cities develop their infrastructure and improve the services and benefits for the local population. And I think it's important that decision makers take their in terms of the long-term plans, involve all stakeholders. And I met with the mayor of the city of Manila a couple of days ago, and he's just doing that. In fact, yesterday they had a sort of town hall meeting involving all the different stakeholders to come together to start to plan develop a plan for how they can use travel and tourism to help develop the city going forward. So this research was done jointly with James Lang LaSalle. We reviewed 50 global cities, looking at their physical and natural assets, social capital, and the existence of any travel and tourism related policies. And we use this work now to share best practice. And Manila, the city of Manila, was one of the cities we included in the report. Okay, so this is the sort of framework we used. At the top, we looked at the current status in terms of the 50 cities around the world, scale versus concentration, and we looked at a whole range of different values. So 79 different values in total were researched for each of the cities. So looking at things like visitor activity, connectivity, accommodation space. We then looked at the mix between leisure and business, in terms of things like the corporate environment, connectivity, accommodation, convention space, which is pretty good in Manila. And then we also then evaluated the sort of readiness of the cities to deal with the future anticipated growth. This plots the 50 cities along the bottom against a sort of readiness score. The purple dots are the anticipated growth in visitor numbers over the next 10 years. And if you go all the way to the end, you will see Manila. Anticipated significant growth in visitors, but not really ready in terms of being able to deal with those. And you're looking at 4 metrics here in terms of labour market, infrastructure, environment, and the sort of stability. So we then came up with a whole range of different policies that you need to involve, that city planners need to work on, a whole range of different things, and we looked at which cities are showing best practice in this area. So for example, the first one in terms of having an economic development plan, Osaka, is a good example, all the way through. Whoops. Finally, we plotted all the cities in terms of 5 different areas of stages, if you like, of development. So you have all the way from dawning developers, emerging performers, all the way through to managing momentum. The ones on the right tend to be more developed societies or cities, and the ones on the left are more at the early stages. If you look at where the different cities fall, you will see Manila are in the first stages. So great opportunity, great growth anticipated, but quite a lot of work yet to do to build for the future. Just finishing, one of the things that we do is host big events. We hold a global summit every year in April where we bring together all of our members, all of the policymakers. 1,200 people come from around the world. The Philippines have just submitted a bid to host, a bit like the Olympics, to host the global summit in 2021. And if they're successful, it would be great if everybody in the room either participate, so attend, or watch on the live stream videos for the summit. And I just want to finish with a short clip, a 2-minute clip, which just showcases the global summit to give you a sense of the scale of this event. As students of travel and tourism, you really should attend this event if we are successful and the Philippines wins the bid. Thank you very much.
There is an industry that touches every part of our world. 1 in 10 people are employed by it, and 10% of the world's GDP is dependent on it. That industry is travel and tourism.
It's one of the biggest employers on earth.
1 in 5 jobs attached to it.
You bring together a powerful, hard-hitting group of people from the travel and tourism industry.
The World Travel and Tourism Council represents the global private sector of travel and tourism. The leaders of these companies control the 3rd largest economic activity on Earth.
People in this room are going to be investing $2 billion incremental dollars in Argentina.
Once a year, these leaders meet at the WTTC Global Summit.
You have all the leaders of very important companies of the world.
Hoteliers, airlines, shipbuilders, tour operators. We're all here.
You can almost see the flight arrivals increasing and the hotels being built and the tourism coming in force.
The host city and region of the Global Summit become the epicenter of the world's travel and tourism sector.
Los estábamos esperando con los brazos abiertos.
A hosting country can really raise awareness of what they can offer.
Everyone comes away with a deeper appreciation for that city, that region.
We hosted the summit. The single largest benefit was the global exposure. You're on the map as a place of convening around one of the basic desires of mankind, travel.
Playing host to WTTC's world-class caliber of membership means engaging with companies who bring hundreds of millions of tourists each year.
It's about the best promotional opportunity I can think of.
I would invite any host ever to host this WTTC summit.
And these same leaders determine hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. Bring the industry, Bring the tourists. Bring the investment. Bring the power of the Global Summit.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to thank Rajala Travel Corporation and congratulate Eileen Clemente, the CEO of Rajala Travel, for organizing this event and for thinking about putting up a tourism knowledge center, which, as you saw earlier, holds a lot of data and information about our industry. And I'm also very privileged to be here in the same stage with the mayor of Iloilo City, Mayor Jerry Treñas, because I grew up in Iloilo and I served for 12 years at the Iloilo Economic Development Foundation, which I will explain to you in a while. And it serves like a model for how to attract investments to a city. So let me begin with my first slide. A city should have an environment that will make that city livable for its residents. So my first message really is that investors will not go to your city unless your city is livable and that the residents are happy residents in that city. And it should be an inclusive development where everyone is part of the development and feel that they are part of that development. You see in the slide, you have to have fresh air, clean air, water, excellent education, affordable housing for everybody. Next slide, please. Good transportation and connectivity. I will use Iloilo as an example. It's in the island of Panay and the infrastructure is very good. You can go around the island from Iloilo City as a base. In fact, there are many bicyclers that are doing that already. By air, Iloilo is also very well connected to Manila, Davao, Cebu, and other urban centers in the Philippines. Access to parks and green spaces for residents. We have a lot of plazas and open spaces. We have our river esplanade, which our mayor will show you later, which is the pride of Iloilo. But the next project of our mayor is to find space in the city where we can have a forest park with indigenous trees. And this is the mayor's dream project. So this is part of the access to parks and green spaces for residents. Next slide, please. Okay, local government should provide the right incentives, fiscal and non-fiscal incentives, for the private sector to invest in infrastructure and businesses that create jobs, that put up with certain amounts of capital. And for the non-fiscal incentives, we have a very facilitative environment where business permits and other kinds of permits are made easy to obtain. And if you are an investor in Iloilo City, aside from the city investment officer, there is a group like ours, the Iloilo Economic Development Foundation, that can hold your hand as an investor to facilitate your decision to put your investment in the city. Next slide. Local governments need to ensure that tourism and its future growth is managed and fully integrated into the city's plans and policies. So tourism is not just promotions, but that it is well planned and integrated into the overall plan of the city. Next. All right, so what makes a private sector want to invest in a city? This is just like a summary of what I said earlier. There should be easy access to the destination, connectivity within the destination, and you will see some slides later on in the mayor's presentation how this is made possible. that there is infrastructure, power, water, sewage treatment, solid waste disposal, telecoms. These days, nobody would really want to invest where there is very slow internet, right? So this is a big challenge. Attractions and activities which are organized. So for those tourism students, you know that there should be tour packages. In Iloilo, we have packages that promote cuisine, because food in Iloilo is very, very delicious. We have packages that promote the culture and heritage of the city. We also have biking tours because we have bike lanes in the city, and a lot of many different themed circuits which we are currently promoting. All right, next. There should be an availability, there should be a range of accommodations, not just 5-star or 4-star, but accommodations even for students like you. We lack youth hostels, for example. We need more of that, so more of the young people can travel at a very affordable rate. There's amenities and services which observe international standards, and very important, a skilled workforce. Iloilo has 8 universities, 19 colleges, and we graduate about 25,000 students a year. It is a university and college city, so the demographic is very young, and so we have the availability of people that can work in various industries, and I think that's one of our strengths. And I think maybe what I failed to include in this slide is that there should be peace and order. And there will be peace and order if the people are prosperous and if they are included in the development. Next. So it was mentioned earlier that there are a lot of stakeholders and actors that will make investments possible. And I have listed just a few. I hope you can see, those of you at the side. Local government, the private sector, big, small, and medium enterprises, chambers of commerce, universities, colleges, senior high schools, culture and arts community. That's very important that we have them there, because culture is the soul of any place, and we should never forget. It should not just be physical development, but also social, cultural, and historical. And NGOs, especially environmental groups, because sustainability, environmental sustainability is a big issue. If there are too many tourists and they're not managed, your environment can suffer. Next slide. All right, so this is a drone perspective of a part of our city. You will see that the river is a prominent feature of our city, and Mayor Treñas will explain to you how we cleaned up the river, rehabilitated it, relocated the informal settlers, and now it has become a very beautiful river esplanade. All right, next slide. All right, so what was the vehicle that the city used to attract investments? Investments in total, and including tourism investments. In 2007, during the mayorship of Mayor Treñas, he called Ilonggos in Manila, living in Manila, and I was one of them, to ask for help. He said, I can't do this by myself. We have to have a public-private sector partnership here. And I'd like the Ilonggos in Manila to come and give back to their city. So there were 4 or 5 of us from Manila that was invited to form the Iloilo Economic Development Foundation. Now maybe you'll ask, why not the Ilonggos locally? Well, they're there too. All the major organizations, business organizations in Iloilo are members of ILED. But I think at that time, Iloilo was just starting to wake up from long years of slumber. All right, it was kind of left behind by Cebu and Davao and other cities because it had stagnated. So I think the good mayor realized that maybe the people in Iloilo were a little bit sleepy at the time, and it needed Ilonggos in Manila to champion the cause of Iloilo. So the foundation was founded in 2007, and it's, as I said, it's a public-private partnership. Next slide. And the mandate is to provide an enabling environment to attract investments to Iloilo and to actively promote Iloilo as an investment destination. So next slide. So while ILED was doing its work, there were a lot of things that needed to be done. So the first issue that had to be addressed was power, because we had frequent brownouts. All right? And while the environmental groups were rallying against the coal-fired power plant, we had to make the hard decision to say yes to a coal-fired power plant. Otherwise, we would have no power. And without power, no investments would come in. Okay? So I will leave the rest for the mayor to explain. But what we do as a foundation is we have held several investment forums to tell the whole country and even the foreign community that Iloilo is open for business. And that this was hosted, and these were some of the events that we hosted. The latest one was at the Intercontinental Hotel when it was still up and running. Next. We've had investment missions overseas to Hong Kong and to China, and the people that we met in Hong Kong and China have come to Iloilo also to take a look-see at what we have to offer. Next. Because power was and continues to be a big problem in Iloilo, not the generation, but the distribution of power, we funded at a very expensive cost an independent study on how power distribution in Iloilo can be improved, so that no one else could tell us what to do. We have a solid study to back us up. Okay, next. We maintain a website. It's now being upgraded so that it becomes a real economic portal with all the data that is needed so that investors can make the right decisions about investing in Iloilo. We hold economic briefings. There are many groups now because Iloilo has become so popular. There are so many groups that come to Iloilo, and if the city or the province investment officer is not available because there's so much demand on our time, on their time, ILED conducts the briefing. That means we have to work closely together with the city and the province. And we help also upgrade the capabilities of the local investment officers. So we have to work in tandem. Next slide. In 2011, the Government Industry Academe Council was organized with the help of USAID, and it was first lodged in ILED, in our foundation. And what the GIA aims to do is to bridge the gap between the demand by business for workers and the supply. So the schools have to know what kind of courses have to be introduced, new courses, so that the graduates of those courses can be fed into the business. The skills mismatch issue has to be addressed. Now, this council has now a life of its own, but it was started in ILED, and it gives the investor sense of comfort that there is dialogue between the government, the industry, and the academic sectors. Next. This is the new one. It's called the MICE Alliance. MICE, as tourism students, MICE stands for Meetings, Incentives, Conventions, Exhibitions, Events. And this is a picture of our convention center. And the MICE Alliance was formed so that we can actively promote Iloilo as a convention and events destination. Again, it's all the stakeholders working together. And our good mayor just informed me this morning that as we speak, there is a workshop going on to involve even the lowest level, the barangay captains, the taxi drivers, and everyone involved to make them a part of our MICE strategy. Because if they don't feel that they are a part of it, they don't understand it, then they won't cooperate. See, so again, the teamwork and the concerted effort to make things happen is there. Next. So the success factors, and this is my last slide. We've been blessed because we've had political unity. Usually, if the mayor or the governor belong to different parties or the congressman, it's very hard to work in that environment. But we have been so blessed that for the last 12 years, there has been political unity in Iloilo. So we work together. And it has inspired the private sector to work with the government because of this unity. Public-private partnerships, I've talked about that. We have champions in the national level. Well, we have Senator Frank Drilon, who is Ilonggo, who works very hard to make sure that there are budgets for infrastructure in Iloilo. And Ilonggos in Manila have also been mobilized to help Iloilo. If you have a foundation like ILED, you have to have a high-caliber executive director, and we've had two, and they have been very, very good because they are the full-time executives. Those of us in the board just do the policy, but it's the executive director that implements. There's community participation, which I've talked about, and we have to put equal importance on the socio-cultural development of the city with the physical infrastructure. And the mayor's presentation will show what are some of these cultural, historical, and artistic efforts that we are doing in Iloilo together with the infrastructure. So I think that ends my presentation. Thank you, and I'll answer your questions.
Good morning. My name is Michael Cortez. I'm Filipino. Although I reside in Japan, I used to teach at De La Salle University, Manila, and now I moved to Japan. I'm a full-time university professor at Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University, and I'm the deputy director of the Ritsumeikan Center for Asia Pacific Studies. In the center, one of our core research themes is tourism, inclusive leadership, and many other emerging themes in the Asia-Pacific region. How did I get into tourism? I'm a non-resident fellow of Asian Institute of Management Center for Tourism, and I organize conferences of the Asia-Pacific Business and Economics Research Society. It travels around the Asia-Pacific region where we present academic literature on themes such as tourism. Meanwhile, let me ask, since many students here are, I'm sure you're millennials, so who has an IG account? Don't be shy. Okay. You don't have IG accounts? So you have an IG account. Of course, you have a Snapchat. You have a Facebook, definitely. That's how you communicate and chat with everybody. But basically, I asked because I designed this presentation to appeal to millennials to sell the idea of how do we frame heritage tourism within ecotourism in the country. Well, of course, the title is The Readiness of cities and infrastructures that are needed to support tourism activities of the country, of the city. But then again, where do we frame heritage tourism? I presented this in the Intramuros Development Board, Intramuros in Letran, at De La Salle, and other institutes for sustainability study. But basically, if I were to summarize my presentation, it's about accepting the fact that the Philippines is seen as a one large beach. Okay? It's a beach destination. And how we would frame heritage would be a subset or a sub-factor of how heritage, how tourism is going to be packaged. So, okay, let me start with this presentation. So this is in Coron. So it's actually a cliche of all the things you post on Instagram, right? all your aerial shots, all your swimming by the beach shot or walking away. And here's another one that looks much like it. So I was just up at Coron 2 weeks ago, and last weekend I was in Siargao. So that's what I do every school break. I travel, and I like traveling a lot. I do research on travel. So I presented in these countries just to overemphasize that I like to travel a lot. So this is the academic society I host. I like business studies, accounting, finance, economics, and sustainability. Basically, if you Google me up on Google Scholar, you'd find my sustainability studies on manufacturing. But how did I end up in tourism? Basically, I overexploited the themes on manufacturing, sustainable manufacturing, green manufacturing already, that I thought I would explore something else closer to me, or to which I'm very much personally invested in, and that is my country, the Philippines. And that's why I'm in tourism studies. I like to travel with my friends. I like to travel with my family. I like to travel a lot alone. I also like to travel with my students, with my colleagues from De La Salle, my colleagues from Ritsumikan Asia Pacific Studies. I travel with my nephews and nieces when we visit these things, making it fun and educational family trips. So, formally now, my objective here is to present a conceptual framing of heritage tourism within the context of sustainable tourism. Secondly, heritage tourism is a subset of ecotourism. We will identify the key variable, which Ms. Lim has already pinpointed earlier, but later I will try to put a framework, because you as students, when you eventually write your research and you eventually write your thesis, you would need frameworks, conceptual frameworks, operational frameworks, to put together these things. And I'm sure the LGUs know it very well already, and of course our industry partners know that as well, that they they provide you with data, they provide you with information, but how do you put information together? You would need a framework. And finally, we will look into the benefits and challenges in a multi-stakeholder approach. So, right. So this is the idea of every foreigner about the Philippines. It's a beach. In our university, we have around 90 countries represented. It's an international university. And every summer and spring break, I bring my students here for a sustainable tourism class, even sustainable fashion class. So we travel, and definitely they get to experience the beaches in the Philippines. And it's my opportunity to teach them tourism as well. Here are some models of sustainability by Stuart Hart in his book, Beyond Greening, Strategies for a Sustainable World. We can see here the market economy, nature economy, survival economy. If we are to frame the Philippines, probably we are here in the survival economy and the nature economy. Therefore, our tourism strategies are limited to sustainable use of nature economy, replenishment of depleted resources, and to foster village-based business relationships or community-based relationships. Up in the middle is our theme, mega cities. How do mega cities adopt to tourism? We're not touching on poverty and pollution at this point. Probably we are here in the resource depletion. If we start with the right foot, saying that the Philippines is a beach. So the Philippines is a beach, therefore we have a nature economy, yet how do we preserve that? Then maybe we are looking at the survival economy. Well, market economies are usually Japan, Korea, China, Australia, Guam, Taiwan, America, European countries. Tourists are on their own and facilities are built, it's safe. They can take public transport. You go to Osaka, you experience cuisine, you go to the places you see on Instagram or Facebook, or just Google it up. Ask Google things to do in Osaka, and then it already tells you what to do. That is the market economy. In nature economy, we have Vietnam, Philippines, and the main product is basically ecotourism. You go there, and then you experience hospitality, you experience the food, and you keep coming back for more, and that is heritage tourism. That is when heritage tourism comes in. It becomes the flavor of the experience. It sweetens the deal. It's the icing on the cake. It's the cream over your frappuccino. It's the ice cream on your halo-halo. Okay, plus more. But basically, you experience heritage, culinary, history. That is nature economy. And then moving on is survival economy, where some countries have a dark side of tourism, slum tours, poverty tourism, immersion programs, social enterprises. But they don't go there basically for that primary purpose. You become more interested in a country as you get to know its people, as you get to know the food, the country, the religion, the experience, that you keep coming back for more. But this is an example of a survival economy that some fishermen in Oslo have had to feed the whale sharks so that they stay there. They become pets and become tourist attractions, but it's now being questioned as to its sustainability. So this is a framework that I have been using all along, and I hope many of you will also use. You may Google him up, Bjork. So Bjork uses the ecotourism model where there is an interaction between authorities, tourists, tourism businesses, and the local community. In another framework with Dr. John Paulo Rivera, my co-author, we have revised it in the Sustainable Tourism Framework, which we have presented in many different forums, but we'll go back to that in a short while. Meanwhile, as Ms. Lim presented earlier about the stakeholders, we can plug in all the multi-stakeholders here, looking into the authorities, tourism businesses, the tourists themselves, and local community. That's why I asked the students, do you have an IG account? Of course, you have an IG account. And when you go to a particular destination, like I was in Siargao with my daughter last weekend, and she said, we want to go to this bent coconut tree. And I said, why do you want to go to that bent coconut tree? There are like millions of coconuts in the island. Why that particular coconut tree? And she said, because it is the most Instagrammable place on Corregidor Island in Siargao. I said, okay, let's go and find the bent coconut tree. So basically the tourist interaction with, there's interaction between tourist businesses and tourist authorities and local community. Tourists get to experience, immerse with local life, appreciation of local culture. So in this quadrant, we have food tourism, volunteerism, and cultural exchange. Well, it's Bjork's model, but it's actually my model together with Dr. Rivera, because we've already expounded on what are the possibilities for tourists' interaction with local community. They experience food. They get stuck there after a typhoon, they volunteer. Or probably they don't leave. I arrived in Siargao last week and somebody was carrying an iMac. A tourist guy had an iMac, and probably he really planned to stay there for a long time. Otherwise, he would have just brought a phone or a laptop. But an iMac, personal computer, means somebody plans to stay there for a long time. Tourist businesses and the local community, of course, we have to deal with transportation, hotels and restaurants, tour operators, and allied services. Between authorities and tourists, we look into immigration, tourist assistance, and probably the promotion of heritage tourism. Between authorities and tourist businesses, we have, of course, environmental taxes, infrastructure, development, certification. Outside the quadrant are environmental regulations, immersion with local life, provision of employment and livelihood, and taxation, quality monitoring, and environmental regulations. So we plugged in all these stakeholders in, according to Bjork's, these are the four, but of course, according to you may add some NGOs and special purpose organizations to probably between businesses and local communities. In the next framework I will show you, we show that in some areas, there is weak presence of the authorities and interaction with local community. In the academe, when we have a broken line, we show that there is weak relationship. But of course, our experience in Iloilo is one of the regarded best practices. Even in our university, we look into one village, one product. We look in one town, one product. And Iloilo has always been a good example of the strong relationship between local communities and the local authority. But generally speaking, yeah, I've been testing this. That's why I traveled to Coron, I traveled to Siargao, I've been to Puerto Princesa and many other sites, tourist sites. In a way, this relationship is weak, okay, which needs a lot of improvement, because we need to strengthen this, because the authorities don't just need to do business environmental taxes, but build the infrastructure. If there's no infrastructure, how do you even promote tourism? There's not even a road going there. Or there should be certification and quality monitoring and environmental regulations. The local community, on the other hand, can have community-based tourism model. They can promote heritage tourism, ecotourism, and food tourism. These are all the allied services and direct and indirect tourism businesses and their interaction with tourists. Likewise, it is mediated by the relationship based on their expectations from the media and the internet. Before you go to Siargao, you Google up, where's the cliff to dive? Don't do that. there's no rescue, okay? Or where is this rock on Coron? I have to go there. I have to take a picture at Kayangan Lake, like that. So it's, there is a large expectation set or mediated by the media and the internet that allow tourists and tourist businesses to interact. But basically, in our presentations at Department of Tourism, we say that tourism is basically private initiated. But of course, there is an importance, the authorities are equally important, and the local community has an emerging role in sustaining tourism in the Philippines and in the locality. if we are to define heritage tourism, it is a subset concerned with the country, region, culture, specifically the lifestyle of people in a geographic area, their history, art, religion, and other elements that shape their lives. I had an atheist friend, and he said, "Oh, I like Thailand. They have spectacular mosques." And my reply was, "Oh, we have spectacular churches." So, our churches are awesome. They're they date back to hundreds of years ago. So, traveling to experience the places and activities that authentically represent the stories of people of the past and the present, and includes visiting irreplaceable historic, cultural, and natural resources. So, these are the key variables for heritage tourism. We look into the personal characteristic. The person has to be interested in the heritage or into humanities, somebody who would appreciate food, somebody who would appreciate the experience more than just dipping their toes on sand and water, but to the entire experience. Site attributes, what's in the site aside from the bent coconut tree? The Japanese are very good in putting site attributes. And we say in heritage studies, if the heritage is not there, build the heritage. Make a story. There are some caves in Japan where they put a Buddha, they put something there just to put an attraction. And they're very good in building a heritage so that, when you're just driving along and you will say, okay, there's a waterfall there. Oh, there's a cave there. It's all in the local community or local government map on tourist sites. Awareness, perceptions, and behavior modification. So awareness is raised at this level because, you Google up, okay, what's there in Siargao, what's there in Coron, and what are your perceptions? After the experience, your behavior modification. So this is me climbing the Batad rice terraces. There was a grant from TIEZA where Dr. Rivera and I climbed the Batad rice terraces beside the Banawe rice terraces, only to find out that the Banawe rice terraces is just a jeepney ride away, 5 minutes from the hotel. We didn't have to hike up. But anyway, this is my Taiwanese friend who joined the hike, and we did this 5 years ago in our early 40s, and we swore never to do it again. This is my buddy, Dr. John Paulo Rivera, who had an economic dilemma whether to fall face front into mud or fall off the cliff. What would have been your decision? So basically, when we're looking I use this slide all the time when we ask for the personal characteristic. Because when we entered the Batad rice terraces, nobody told us that the climb would be 4 hours going up. And we just asked the tour guide, how long does it take? He just, a few steps. And we said, how many is a few steps? He said, maybe 200. And then I was counting 175, and I said, it's already 175. How many more? He said, maybe 2 hours more. But that's him. I'm not blaming him though. But you see, it was death-defying actually, and I was still, oops, time is up. Let me just quickly finish this up. So, that's me after the climb, and I hated it. At least I survived. These are opportunities for heritage tourism in the Philippines. Once they know we have cockfighting, then maybe we can promote that kind of tour. In South America, they have slum tours. There are cemetery tours, there's historical tours, religious tours, and culinary tours. It depends on the personal characteristic on who is interested. Basically, my point is heritage is the second time around. It's the deal sweetener. So this is Halong Bay in Japan, and in Vietnam, and I didn't like it because they made it shining, shimmering, splendid with all the Disney lights, which is a no-no in the underground river of Palawan, because we have an environmental carrying capacity there. But still, they lit it up so that it looks fancy for a picture. But no, it's not impressive. These are my students when we tour in last class picture. It promotes employment, develops businesses, enhance property values, generate revenues for local government, and preserve the community's unique character and identity. So these are the challenges ahead. Community participation, as raised by Ms. Lim. What's in it for them? And this might be a little controversial, but I was in Coron and Siargao. I'm sorry, Siargao, but Siargao is in a losing end. You know, it's not ready. While we're talking about the readiness of the country, readiness of cities, Manila, tourists go through Manila, tourists go through the actual destination, but I would not recommend Siargao to a friend because the hospital is not ready. I'm not saying I agree with Yang Constantino, right? She shouldn't have ranted on social media, but I knew the risks I was getting into. When I was there, there's no rescue, there's no, enter at your own risk when I did my spelunking. So, harmony and interdependencies between community and tourism goals, environmental carrying capacity, sustainability of the resource base, planning and marketing heritage, built heritage tourism. We can talk about that in the question and answer when there is time. Meanwhile, there's another time is up. Just to summarize, this is my expectations versus reality. How do you do that? This is my augmented reality. Get the best tour guide. And the tour guide will really make sure you get to counterflow the flow of tourists and you get to get a picture where there's nobody else but you. So challenges ahead, community participation. This picture-perfect Instagrammable moment is courtesy of this guy who cleaned up the beach. So it's not always perfect. Somebody is cleaning it. I always tell my tourism students, this perfect photo is courtesy of this guy. So harmony and interdependencies in Coron, while there's an overflow of tourists, they are organized so everyone will help you cross the line of boats. It's okay, they will help you. But sorry, this is my daughter, and before I took this aerial shot, boats were just parking in any which way in Siargao. Regardless whether you're swimming there or not, but they will park no matter what. So there's no designated areas in that particular beach. Environmental carrying capacity, we can talk about that later. And then sustainability of the resource base. I'll probably just end here because there's already the time is up signal. But my point is that it's the people. These are my favorite tour guides, Beda and Renz. They're the sweetest tour guides, and they make me keep on coming back, learning about the Tagbanwas, learning about Kulyon, learning more and more and more about history and culture of the Tagbanwas in Coron. And that's why it's the people that matters, and community participation is very important. Heritage tourism is the deal sweetener. It's the ice cream on your halo-halo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cortez. May I call on our moderator and our first three panelists to be on stage for our open forum.
Okay, so I'm sure a number of you are already excited to ask questions to our three distinguished panelists. So I'd like to invite members of our audience, students, and also our partners from the industry. This is your time to ask our panelists about any questions you may have about their presentations. Okay, so while we're waiting for them to frame their questions, I wanted to ask our three speakers, most especially Mr. David and Ms. Lim, as urban centers actually that's experience growth in tourism, how do we manage now the flows of the visitor volume so that we eventually avoid the conflicts that may arise between residents and tourists because of congestion or over-tourism, and because of it's a result of a very successful, let's say, media promotions?
So we also have at WTDC been doing some research looking at destination management in terms of flows of tourists, and I think there's a number of cities around the world and hotspots in terms of tourist sites where they're starting to experience some real pressures in terms of too many tourists arriving at peak times. So I think what we've been doing, so places like Barcelona and Venice, Taj Mahal, examples like that. One of the things that we're recommending is that you have a plan. So you get all the relevant stakeholders together, including local residents, and you also involve key components of the industry. So, for example, cruise is often a cause of some real issues in terms of over-tourism. And then you just agree a plan, essentially. You, for example, reschedule the arrivals of cruise ships, or you limit the number of passengers arriving at a particular point in time. So I think really it's about developing a plan, getting all the relevant stakeholders together, and then making sure you're joined up.
Thank you very much, Mr. David, for the response. Ms. Team, in terms of, let's say, Iloilo, so we've seen actually the growth of Iloilo over the years. So what are, let's say, some mitigating plans for over-tourism?
Well, so far we're lucky that there has not been too many tourists yet, so there's no overcrowding as other destinations have experienced, like Boracay, where the carrying capacity has already been exceeded. But realizing that the growth will come, then there has to be a management plan on how to regulate the tourists in popular sites. So one way would be to disperse them by having a lot of options and not just having one particular site as the attraction. There has to be a lot of attractions so that tourists have an option to go to several tours in a day. And other destinations have used this, make the destination expensive, have lower volume of tourists by making the destination expensive. And I think our friend Robin might talk about that when he talks about Bhutan. That's one strategy. There are many. In several sites abroad, for example, if you cannot really look at the real thing or the real attraction because it is so sensitive and fragile, you can have reproductions of that, and that's where the mass of tourists go. And if you want to see the real thing, like the Lascaux caves, for example, in France, then that will be a very, very expensive proposition.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Cortez, would you like to add to those responses?
One key point Ms. Lim presented earlier was the organized tours. And if I may contrast again the experience in Siargao and Coron, is that Coron is very organized, whereas Siargao is a little, you're on your own. You go to a port, you rent a boat, you go to wherever, and you just pay the landing fee. There's a central regulation at the port. You pay that, including the boat, and then you also pay every landing fee. And which made me wonder in Siargao, because they collect landing fees, but that's it. The moment the local government issues you the Republic of the Philippines receipt, he disappears. Okay, you already paid 100 or 150, and then he's gone. Whereas in Coron, when you pay the landing fee to a Tagbanwa, who is really the owner of the island or the beach, somebody is looking after you. Okay, and then later on you would learn that the money goes to a community-based model where the fellow ethnic groups also benefit from that landing fee or entrance to the site. I would just like to point out that they have a different level of organization when it comes to tours, and based on your expectations, you would not know that unless you go there. So maybe lower down your expectations when you go to a particular destination, and
I think Dr. Cortez, the emphasis there would be really to engage also these other islands in those areas so that we could spread the benefits from the urban core towards more of those islands in places that you mentioned, like those of Coron and Sharjah.
Definitely.
So maybe I would like
we don't see that in the Instagram post.
Yeah, that's true, that's true. So thank you for that. Now I'd like to ask again our participants if you have any questions that you'd like to direct to our panelists. Yes, please. And then the second would be...
good morning.
Please state your name and your affiliation.
Hello po. Good morning everyone and to the speakers. I am Paolo Divisa, studying International Studies here in Beda. This is a question I would like to ask for Mr. David Nigel. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Hello. Can I ask po, what are the top 3 areas that Manila should address for it to be ready for tourism?
Okay, so I think Manila is, if you talk about the Metro Manila, obviously 16 cities. So maybe I'll just talk about Manila City because I think that's a little bit more manageable in your mind. And I think there's some evidence that already this is being addressed, and I think we saw some examples on some of the earlier presentations as well. For example, the cleanliness and the tidiness of the city. I know that since the mayor's come in, he's had a sort of a real blitz in terms of a real clean-up of the city, and I think that's very important. So I think they've started well. I think in terms of some of the other key areas, I would say probably in the context of the city of Manila, maybe the sort of infrastructure side of things, the roads, and the general sort of ability for people to move around the city, I think that could be improved. And I think, maybe I'll save my third point to a general point around involving all the key people in coming together, which I think has also started, and there was a big meeting yesterday involving residents as well, to really identify some of the key things that need to be improved. And we saw on the Readiness report, I think that looks at four key areas: the people aspect, and that's availability of the right people trained and with the right skills. And I think Manila City is probably well placed to have that. It's about the infrastructure, and I think we talked about maybe improvements there. I think it's about the stability. I think you've certainly got that here. And the general environment. So probably improvements to the general environment are required. So I think you're on the course to really do the right things and improve the environment in Manila City.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have another question.
Good morning. I am Rosan from Lyceum of the Philippines, University, Manila. My question is addressed to Dr. Cortez. My question, sir, is I would like you to comment about or on vloggers and travel shows that are featuring destinations in the Philippines that are not yet ready to accept tourism.
That's a good point. I actually started vlogging as well. You know, I'm like a millennial uncle. And basically, what I would like, my comment on these vloggers is that they make the experience look and sound so awesome. Nobody wants to show the perils or the dangers or the ugly, the dirty, the difficult side, because it's a lifestyle that they are trying to promote. And most millennials are trying to adhere, which is the wrong side of it. And that's why there should be more information. There should be local community support to show and manage expectations, because for you to do your spelunking or to do your picture on the cliff or probably dive on the cliff, you should know that there are limited resources and probably the destination is not yet ready for any free diving facility. There is no disaster response, emergency response, and probably local community hospital is not equipped yet for those kind of accidents. So my point is be careful in promoting the content, and for millennials not to believe everything. Don't believe everything on the internet because it's expensive. It's not easy. It's an image in your mind that's not true.
Thank you. Nurse, would you like to add to that? Okay. We have a question from the lady here in front.
Good morning. I'm Patricia from LPU Cavite. So my question is for Ms. Narzalita Lim. So as what you've said earlier that Iloilo is a slumber place before, any recommendations or any steps for Manila to achieve that kind of accessible place?
Okay, you would like to know how Manila can be like Iloilo?
Not that thing. I mean, in terms of traffic, as what you've said, you have a bicycle lane.
Oh, okay. Well, taking off from what Nigel said, that one of the things that Manila has to do is work on its physical infrastructure. I think the first there should be pedestrian lanes before bicycle lanes. It's hard to walk around Manila, right? We were blessed that when parts of the city were designed, there was already a plan for pedestrian and bicycle lanes. No? So I don't know how Manila can do it because it's a massive redevelopment if we have to add that kind of infrastructure. No? So maybe it's better if we do it in new cities or up and coming cities.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hello. My name is Robin an IU student from San Beda College, Alabang. My question is for Mr. David. So you talked about how for urban cities to be prepared for tourism in the future, there should be certain technologies or automation. So long lines would be cut because biometrics would be taken instead, fingerprints, face scanning. So my question is, do you think technology or automation, for that matter, will negatively affect the number of job opportunities in the tourism industry? And if so, how can we respond to this? Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's a really good question. Very good question. I think definitely, I think technology has a role to play. And all of us live our lives so differently now using technology, and just the simple example of the mobile phone. It will definitely cut jobs wherever you look, and not just obviously in our sector, but all sectors you have automation already. I think what I would say in terms of travel and tourism is, whilst it will remove some jobs, I think it will be more the jobs that are involved in sort of processing, the jobs that don't really add a lot of value. So for example, we talk about biometric technology. I think we advocate that given the volumes of people you saw on my figures, that the huge growth we're going to see in people traveling and international travelers, the current infrastructure, particularly at airports and ports, cannot cope with those sort of volumes. We cannot build new airports fast enough to deal with the future volumes of tourists. So in order to accommodate them, we're going to have to use technology to dramatically transform the way in which people travel. And if you think when you travel and you have to present your passport so many times, it is so inefficient to a process to have to do that. Much the same way that e-tickets have replaced paper tickets now, and your boarding pass is on your phone. So I think on those sort of more manual-based processing, they will be replaced with technology. Using biometric technology, there are already trials out there where you can go through airports without having to present your passport. And WTDC is advocating not just air side, but also on the land side, the non-air arrangements, use of biometric technology, for example, when you're checking into your hotels, when you're taking your car hire, etc. The point I would say, though, I think that's unique about the travel and tourism sector is that hospitality, is the caring of people, and no better place do you see it than in the Philippines, where you have this amazing hospitality that's genuine, it's from the heart. I think those roles are always going to survive. They are critical to the experience. It's the roles that are more about the sort of more mundane aspects of travel that you will see those being replaced with automation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we can entertain one last question from our participants. Yes. The lady at the back, and then, okay, we'll jump in.
Good morning. My name is Tasha from International Studies of Beda College, Alabang. My question is for Secretary Narzalino. How do you ensure the continuity of tourism projects in Iloilo given the changing phases of politics? Thank you.
That's a very good question. The involvement of the private sector is very, very important. So if our mayor changes 3 years from now, the private sector can carry on the plans and programs that have already been instituted during this term. So a very strong private sector participation is important in any project, not just tourism. And as I mentioned also, the communities' involvement in the process, in the planning, and in the execution of the tourism plan makes that plan sustainable.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you. The last question before we conclude this panel session.
Good morning, everyone. I'm King Radzwan from LPU Manila. So this question is for everyone. New Clark Green City is the venue for Southeast Asian Game this year. It is a smart city, but there are Aita community or the natives that were displaced. How can we address this kind of issue in building new cities in the suburban and rural areas in the country? Address the question to all of them.
All right. I did see that post on Facebook, and I was wondering whether it was fake news. I don't know whether, in fact, the ATAs were displaced, because if you talk to Vince Dizon, who is the head of BCDA, he said that the ATAs were consulted and were part of the planning process, and that relocation sites were made available to them. So I think that we'll have to see both sides of the question. But of course, the indigenous peoples should always be part of the development process, because they were the original settlers in that land. You might have a smart city, but if the people there are not, the original settlers are not part of it, then it is really not a real development. So as you will see in the next presentation of our mayor, when the plan to redevelop and clean up the Ilo River was conceived, the first thing that was addressed was the relocation of the informal settlers who were living on the banks of the river. And I think that's why it's a good model of a successful development. So I think maybe we should interview BCDA and find out what they've done for the indigenous peoples in the new city.
I think Ms. Lim gave a very good suggestion as part of the way forward. Let's first check what BCDA has actually done, and then maybe TKC can also find out more about this. So at this point, I'd like to conclude our panel session on measuring preparedness of cities for tourism growth. So on behalf of the Tourism Knowledge Center, I'd like to thank Mr. David, Ms. Narzalita, and of course Dr. Cortez for joining us today. And do you have any other last points to share with our participants? No. It's not? Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. I now welcome you to our second panel, where we will look into models of cities and destinations that have actually developed and pursued resiliency and inclusive development, and are still in the process of doing so. Our first panel speaker would be Attorney Sofia Arboladura. She is the current director of the Manila Tourism and Cultural Affairs Bureau.
Attorney Arboladura is a member of the Philippine Bar. She finished her Bachelor of Chemistry of Laws at the Pamantasan Lungsod ng Manila. She also served in the city government of Manila, holding the position as the city treasurer's office and the city legal office. And aside from being the acting president of the Universidad de Manila for several years, she also served some fruitful years in the academe. Attorney Arboladura is a consistent scholar throughout her academic years. She now holds the position of tourism director and is tasked in helping the local chief executive of Manila, Mayor Escobarel, in promoting the city as the tourism hub of the Philippines. She will present at the Manila Tourism Circuit and Heritage Preservation as the gateway for city tourism development. Our second panel speaker is the Honorable Mayor of Iloilo City, Mayor Jerry Treñas. Attorney Jerry Treñas was the first mayor of Iloilo City at the start of the new millennium. During his term, he employed participatory governance, which at that time is less demonstrated across the country. During his term, he was able to capitalize the sentiments and aspirations of the population into an institutionalized development roadmap. So the Ilocos have visualized a premier Iloilo City by 2015, and that was just realized in time. From his student days in mastering persuasive leadership, Mayor Jerry Treñas convincingly formed a unique group in the House of Representatives in the year 2014. This group is known as the Visayan Block. The focus of the selected members of the House was more on the greater regional development towards sustainable national economy in the Visayas region. These approaches have loosened the grip of what we call the Imperial Manila in directing almost every aspect of national affairs during those times. He served as president and chairman of the League of Cities of the Philippines for the year 2006 to 2010. And he played a very crucial role in developing better access to the programs under the administration of different national agencies. Someone back home, he actually garnered 72% of the Ilonggo population during the last election of May 13, 2019. This is so far the greatest margin in Iloilo politics with his so-called WILLS program. They improve infrastructures and economic developments envisioned to trickle further social services to the community. So the tagline, Level Up Iloilo City, will attain the aspirations of the inhabitants of a city, which in terms of livability is among the top 3 cities in the country. Our third and last panelist for this session is Mr. Robin Yap. Mr. Yap is Asia President of the Travel Corporation, a highly successful international group with 25 award-winning brands. This include Insight Vacations, Trafalgar Tours, Contiki Holidays, Uniworld Cruises, Thomson Gateway Africa, Red Carnation Hotels, and other leisure interests. He spent 4 decades in the tourism industry, and he gained subject matter expertise in the travel and hospitality industry, providing advisory expertise on topics including but not limited to changing dynamics of the industry, responsible tourism and global environment issues, and organizational structure, business modeling, and global best practices. He now serves also as Deputy Chairman of the Tourism Management Institute of Singapore and Chairman Emeritus of the Travel Corporation. So, friends in the industry, let us all welcome our 3 panelists, and I'd like to call on Attorney Sophia to deliver her presentation, to be followed by Mayor Treñas and Mr. Robin.
Good morning. Actually, I don't know what am I doing here, being in the presence of all these experts and distinguished panel of speakers. However, just like what am I doing in the field of tourism when I'm a member of the bar and had no background whatsoever in the field of tourism. However, for the past several years that I am with the Manila Tourism and Cultural Affairs Bureau, I am able to learn something. But that learning has added to what I have learned today from hearing, just by hearing and sitting with the distinguished speakers. Okay, everybody knows that our Mayor-elect Francisco Isko Moreno Domagoso is a vibrant and energetic mayor. Through it's just 2 months from being proclaimed as the mayor, and yet so many changes have been made. In fact, I am proud to be a Manileño. Quoting from what Madam Lim said a while ago, she said that Iloilo, there's a point in time that Iloilo was considered as stagnant compared with other nearby cities, Manila also. And you will agree with me, has been stagnant for so many years. That's why the data that Mr. Nigel David presented speaks for itself already. However, we have done so much in just 2 months, and Manila is gearing for the revival of its glory. It's hard, as what Madam Lim said, but with Mayor Isko, the momentum is there, and we have to capitalize on it. Okay. Just to report to you, yesterday we have already started a seminar or gathering together of all the stakeholders in tourism. We have invited different strata of people, different groups, and we are able to join them together, from the managers to the barangay chairman of the different districts, as well as the transport system, the tricycle driver, and the academe as well. Manila comprises of 6 political districts. District 1, 2, 3, until 6. But yesterday, we're able to make or classify them into 8 tourism hubs. So we are going to start with what is Manila before. What is the history of Manila, founded on June 24, 1571 by Miguel Lopez de Legazpi. It is situated on the eastern shore of Manila Bay and is home to many historical and cultural landmarks. In fact, it is the first chartered city, and it has gained autonomy through the Republic Act 409. Okay, Manila's rich heritage. There is no dispute that Manila is very rich in terms of cultural and historic sites. Okay, what you can see is the old city, or the old part of Escolta. Okay. There is a plan to revive Escolta, and we have started yesterday. We have tackled the strengths and weaknesses of all the tourism hubs, and we are working on it. As Madam Lim said, you need to have master plan for the city. So that is one way of maybe answering one of the students' question a while ago, how can Manila be raised from that poor status to reviving its glory, gaining and learning the strengths and weaknesses. Okay, why heritage is an important asset? Heritage sites and buildings can have a very positive influence on many aspects of the way a city develops. The city of Manila, as we all know, is rich in culture and heritage. It's called one of the famous old streets in Manila. Okay. Adaptive reuse of heritage buildings is an important factor in sustainable tourism, which Escolta is well known for. Manila alone has more than 3,000 historical sites, including objects, but only few are being identified. And one of the factors, I do agree, that one of the factors in which Manila can regain its glory is having political unity. For the past several years, there was no political unity in Manila. However, today, with the mayor and vice mayor as well as the councilors, members of the city councilors joining together to attain the vision of reviving Manila. And one of the problems as well in heritage is not being able to identify and put it in the list of presumptive or presumed important properties. You need to have that list in order to protect the buildings or structures that have to be recognized. Because you will notice, in Manila, you will just learn, or in any other cities, you will learn or hear that this building is being demolished because it's not included in the list. That is why we are going, one of the issues in the tourism plan or master plan is to be able to gather what are those properties that has to be restored or protected. And again, I do agree that before private sectors can protect or develop or prevent it from demolishing their own properties, you need to give incentives to these developers or property owners. Otherwise, they will demolish it and buy or sell it to other property owners. There are too many buildings that have been demolished not only in the Manila area but in other portions of the Philippines. One example of heritage site is the Calle Bautista in Quiapo, wherein in the middle of that bustling and busy streets, you can find the Nakpil House. The Nakpil House is where the architect Nakpil then and his relatives are located. It's still fortunately, the government is doing something to preserve this Nakpil house. And of course, the Quiapo, again, that is a declared historical and heritage site. Areas where the heritage is understood and valued tend to be better looked after than those where heritage items have no link with the community. So there should be link with the community. You need to involve the community in order to preserve that heritage. There should be a link with the community. Santa Ana, Manila, one of the heritage sites as well, has also been declared in a city ordinance. A portion of that Santa Ana has been declared as protected and conserved to be insured. And that is with the aid of legislations. That's the Santa Ana Church. Okay, Tondo. You know very well that Mayor Isko cleaned Divisoria, and you will notice nobody knew that there is a monument, and that has been declared as historical site. That Tondo, wherein the KKK Foundation site is located at El Cano Corner, Ascarga, Claro, M. Recto. Not even the city engineers are aware that that mark is located in the bustling city of Divisoria. That has been cleaned, and hopefully it will be sustained. And again, you are aware of the Taytay site, the Andres Bonifacio Memorial Shrine, which has been cleaned by the mayor immediately. There is a portion there wherein squatters used to reside. It's so foul, the odor was so foul, they made a public toilet of that historical site. Now, it is already a well-known and beautiful site for everybody to enjoy. So, yes, and you will notice that that monument has been vandalized for several times. The parts has been removed. The place has been made a toilet, a public toilet, but lights now surround the memorial, the historical site. The students gather there already. It's now Instagrammable. And Mayor Isko put up a site, a free mobile site, that's what you call that, wherein the students and other one can enjoy it. Okay, another thing that he removed, there is a Ramon Ongpin statue in Binondo that used to be a parking place of, take notice, of the fire trucks, private fire trucks. There is also an air content wherein officers go and made it as an office too. Within a day, from learning, from seeing it, maybe within the first week, he removed it, and now it is already a beautiful park. That is already the Binondo statue, Roman Ongpin statue. So some parks have been given back to the students, to the public. We know already why heritage is an important community asset. It's a proven source of benefit to local economy, particularly through tourism. But people are very proud of their local history. It adds character and distinctiveness to an area. And heritage is fundamental in creating a sense of place for a community. Now, why? One of my topics as well is about tourism circuit. There are tourism circuit is defined as it is a route on which at least 3 major tourist destinations are located in the same village or city. At the same time, they are not separated by a long distance. It should have well-defined entry and exit points. Just 2 weeks ago, the OT Secretary, as well as Intramuros Administration and Mayor Isko, initiated to develop a tourism circuit that would link all the heritage sites in the city to boost tourism. It will link Intramuros to the National Museum, Rizal Park, Binon, and Binondo. Actually, there are at least private groups that are conducting tourist circuit. There is the Quiapo circuit, there is the Intramuros circuit, and there is also now and this one is the new one that will link Intramuros to the National Museum, Rizal Park, and Bonifacio. We hope that we are going to open this in the near future. It will be given to the public. The underpass are also being reconstructed for this purpose, for easy access to Manila and to Manila City Hall, to National Museum and Binondo. Okay, thank you.
Festival, Dinagang Festival!
Alaga, Iloilo!
Good morning to everyone. Known for its delectable cuisine, marvelous century-old churches, heritage structures, colorful festivals, warm and hospitable people coupled with the city's contemporary facet, Iloilo City, with its fusion of the old and new, has been branded as the place where the past is always present. This urban hub in the Visayas is the first Queen City in the southern Philippines because of its distinctive place in the political, economic, and religious landscape during the Spanish era. The prominence of Iloilo as an industrial city rose as the sugar and textile industry grew. When the Spaniards arrived in Tanay, they found the weaving industry in Iloilo was already well established and textile production had already reached a remarkable degree of development. In fact, Iloilo was dubbed as the textile capital of the Philippines, and it became one of the biggest exporters in foreign countries. Iloilo was already an important international port in the 19th century. Our famous textile products are called sinamay, made from banana fibers and ablon, and these continue to thrive up to the present. Iloilo City is also known to numerous old churches, vintage houses, and old institutional and commercial buildings that date back to the time when it was known as the Queen City of the South. The city government has passed an ordinance providing tax incentives, encouraging new generation owners of these heritage houses to give these gems a new lease in life. A number of the notable homes which have retained their old world grandeur and have been given a new lease in life are the Lizares Mansion, which was converted to the Angelicum School, the Kaminya Balay na Bato, which was converted to a one-stop shop, souvenir shop, and a restaurant of Ilonggo, heirloom cuisine. The Nelly Garden that served as the colonial era's watering hole for social events and is still now a venue for weddings and other events. The Molo Mansion, which is now SM's Kultura, selling native and souvenir products. Calyarial, in the downtown, underwent an urban facelift to bring back its glorious past. In 2001, during my first term as mayor, we started with Calyarial redevelopment program with the creation of the Iloilo City Cultural Heritage Conservation Council. In 2006, I envisioned Iloilo to be a premier city, and by 2015, we were able to achieve that. Iloilo City is also known to be the home of colorful festivals, with Parao Regatta Festival, the oldest sailing event in Asia, the famed Iloilo Dinagyang Festival, a cultural and religious celebration of the Ilonggos in honor of the patron saint Santo Niño. Iloilo Dinagyang Festival has become the primary tourism promotion vehicle. Festival tribes were invited several times to perform in the U.S., Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, and New Zealand. In 2009, during my last term as mayor, I commissioned the world-renowned urban planner, architect June Palafox, for the comprehensive land use plan of Iloilo City, which paved the way for the business parks of the different developers like Ayala and MegaWorld. And in 2013, when I was congressman of Iloilo City, I was able to pass a law, Republic Act 10555, declaring several sites in Iloilo as tourism and heritage site. This paved the way for funds coming from the CHESA, the National Historical Commission, the National Museum, which continue to fund these landmarks. And for the present, as a potential convention destination, Iloilo has increased number of tourists every year from 2010 to 2018. The Association of Tourism Officers of the Philippines acknowledged Iloilo City as a premier MICE destination for having successfully hosted 2015 and 2015 APEC and 2017 ASEAN ministerial meetings in Iloilo City. A few months ago, as I was given the opportunity once again to be the father of Iloilo City, we are now bringing Iloilo to the next level. We recently inaugurated the last phase of the Iloilo Esplanade, the longest linear park in the Philippines, of about 8.1 kilometers. This park was funded and planned by Senator Frank Trilon, and it has renewed interest in the Iloilo River, which used to be the area of commerce in our city. Together with my team, we created a roadmap that will further develop Iloilo City, which we call Wheels for Inclusive Development. We will make sure that Iloilo will be prepared for tourism. And as we look to the future, we will welcome more tourists, more visitors, but we have to be ready. And that is why the city government works with the private sector closely to make sure that Iloilo City is ready for the tourists that will come. Thank you and good morning to everyone.
Good morning. Are you ready for lunch? Yes, I think I'm just standing in between. So I'll do it very quickly. Let me just get my clicker. It's gone to the washroom. You were left in the washroom, I guess. So, right, I've been tasked to speak about Bhutan. How many of you have heard of Bhutan? You have? Wow, that's great. The Prime Minister of Bhutan will be very happy. I'm inspired. I'm inspired because my CEO, Mr. Brett Tolman, who is the CEO of the travel corporation that owns Trafalgar, Contiki, Uniworld, and Inside Vacations, has always believed in one thing and passionate about making travel matters, which is so important for us to reduce impact and giving back to the community. And it's with that inspiration that I founded a foundation called Singapore Bhutan Foundation. And that's precisely to do that. But beyond that, I think I just want to share with you some experiences that I've done. I've been to Bhutan for 8 times over the past 8 years. And some of the things that I want to speak about is participative tourism in preserving culture and heritage. How many of you have traveled, you've been there, you do your IG, you do your posting, and 3 days later you've forgotten where you have been? You've been on holiday, you took a lot of pictures, but you've forgotten after 3 days. You don't know where you found those photos, you're all over the place, and you try to figure out you've forgotten. And that's precisely because you're not connected to the community. Why am I connected to the Philippines? It's because my first holiday after my military service in Singapore was in 1978, and my first destination was to Manila, to Sagada, all the way to Baguio, and I spent 4 nights with the Bontoc tribes in Banawi. And that inched into my memory that Philippines was and still a beautiful country. And why didn't we tell the whole world about it? How many of you have, as the professor asked, how many have IG account? How many have Facebook account? And Twitter? You have, all of you have. Now I just want you to do one thing for your country. Every day, post something about your community, about your country. And you multiply it by the number of students in this room, you are the future stakeholder of the Philippines. It's as easy as that. You're the future leaders. You don't have to spend millions putting fanciful advertisement because you are the mouthpiece. Who better promote your heritage, your culture than yourself? Promise me you do that? Yes. Louder! Yes. And you got it. Okay, so that's very important to kickstart what we're going to discuss about preservation. Now, as I was just putting this last night, because I read about what people say what and what do they do and what they believe in. And this is one of the things that they say, for too long tourism destinations have focused on growth in arrivals, number of beds, receipts and revenues and so on, and keeping up with competition. Now, what needs to be done for destination is to promote themselves, position themselves as imaginative communities. Neighborhood, cities, region, countries, possibly even continent, and reinforce, build local character, identity, and civic pride with the same time captivating outsiders. So what needs to be done in tourism? Soft target. It's about happiness. Why Bhutan is so successful is because, did I just spend 5 minutes already? He says, I've got 10 minutes left. you took away 10 minutes. Now, it's because when you hear Bhutan, immediately you think about gross national happiness. They measure the success by the happiness of their people, which is so important. Over the years, it has attracted millions in interest about the destination. Travel and tourism stakeholders, and you are the future stakeholders, leadership in the government, which is so important for you to provide them move. Now, just in case, for those of you who have never been there, it's sandwiched between Tibet, Nepal, China, and the neighbors that is supporting Bhutan is India. So you can see a lot there. Currently, the careful development is in Paro, Thimphu, Punakha, and now it's going to Bumthang and Laksen, which they built the biggest Buddha statue there. Now, someone mentioned about monuments, about church, about building a monument to remind people. Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Taiwan funded the development of the largest Buddha statue in Thimphu. I asked the master, why did you build a statue? You've got 100 millions, give it to the people. He said, Robin, if I give it to the people, they spend it and nothing happens. I build a monument, I attract tourism, I attract development, I improve the life of people in the country. So that's something that you've got to remember about development. Just a very quick data, very nice high altitude, beautiful countries, you don't have to fly there. The temperature is perfect. The only time that is pretty cold is probably January, February. But there's a lot of attraction in there. My affinity with Bhutan. It starts in the development from His Majesty the King, who is the real inspiration of preserving the culture and heritage. So you have the top men who believe, preach, and walk the talk every day about the country. The spiritual leader walk and talk about preserving preserving historical sites. And the young people, hang on, too fast. The young men, there you go. The young monks are building. So it's from the top to the most senior to the most junior, believing in one common language, preserving the culture, promoting tourism in a sustainable manner. So that language is very clear. The connectivity between government and tourism is very close. The Foreign Minister, Mr. Doje, is also the chairman of Tourism Council of Bhutan. So it has a true trade policy and understanding what needs to be supported. And this is our Mayor of Singapore, these are the two Members of Parliament of Singapore, and this is myself. And together we spend a lot of time sharing knowledge. Not that everything Singapore does is good, is successful. What we're saying is we've done it, take away, tweet it, and apply to your community and work. And Bhutan is changing. You know, when I first went there in 27, they were playing with toys. Today, the little monks are rapping. So instead of chanting Buddhist chants, he's rapping. I said, my God, it's only like 8 years and you've already changed so much. So, you know, it's changing very fast. But in doing so, they preserve that Buddhist thing that, you know, people go there to see. And I wrote a lot of articles in Mandarin about why I go back to, I do a lot of talks in Singapore in sharing with them about preservation. Now, delivering authentic experiences is one of the key features that they do, and they do very well with it. And constantly asking people to add Bhutan onto the passport, which is very important. The pride. Now, we talk about single-use plastics. Now, everybody is talking about it. 20 years ago, Bhutan has already banned plastics. So you won't get plastics in the area, and that's the way to promote sustainability. The connectivity to happiness index. This young accountant and myself founded a cottage industry, and there's a reason why I encourage you to engage tourists, to work with the community, to improve lives. And I found out that the divorce rate in Bhutan is going up. I said, how can that be? When you have the gross national happiness index so high, why do people get divorced? Because there was no job opportunities. And therefore, problem arises. So a group of us, we decided to help to form a cottage industry to make scarf, to improve the quality, and so that, and I was sharing with Eileen yesterday, I helped them to form a business with the president, with the treasurer, with the secretary, and it gives importance to the community. So for me, that is really giving back. Now, one very important aspect of the tourism success in Bhutan was the constant renewal of tourism policy on a regular basis. And this is just being done on a daily basis. The Prime Minister himself walked the talk. He cleaned up. You know, when I went to his home, he was cleaning his garden. I said, where's your gardener? He said, if I don't clean the garden, how I know the garden works? So he does it very regularly. He is a urologist at night, Prime Minister at daytime. So he does operations. So he's walking the talk. So the policy, here are some key takeaways which I hope you can share. Rationalize of airfares needed. Participation, be mindful of retaining Bhutan's unique culture, resolving issue with seasonality, lack in skilled workforce and train opportunity for guides, waste management and other tourism products in that area. So it's very focused, very strategic. Some of the models which I don't think we have time to go through now, you can actually ask for these slides. Please give it to them so that they can share in the schools about the natural involvement and how hotels provide high quality experience. And the Tourism Council of Bhutan work closely with Handicraft Association of Bhutan to support local artisans in generating revenue income for tourism activities. So there's a lot of engagement. It's all about engagement. It's all about understanding the future. Licensing. I think one of the key things about, we talk about the tour guide, the professor was talking about the experience of a tour guide. The tour guide are the key stakeholder. Why are we engaging someone else when the people who deliver experience are the tour guides? The tour guides are important people. The Tourism Council of Bhutan meets the tour guides to strengthen collaboration. In fact, they meet it so often that the tour guide become the mouthpiece of the tourism sector because they are the ambassadors. When the foreigner visits the country, the first person he engaged is the tour guide. If the guy looks floppy and not knowledgeable and not knowing how many kilometers you have to climb, you're giving all the wrong information, it gives a wrong impression. So it's very important the first person to connect with. Strengthening collaboration with stakeholders. This Chunji, he was my tour guide. He is a master of 5 languages. And he is just fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, somebody mentioned about losing jobs and maybe technology and AI will take away your job. Trust me, I don't believe machines can replace human. You need high tech, but you need high touch. And you are the people who provide that high touch. Believe me, you'll have a good future. Okay? Just a little bit on Singapore. As we plan, Singapore is a tiny island. Many of you have been there. This is our latest future of Singapore, which is the green corridor that connects the whole island. I'm a cyclist, I just did the 120 kilometers round island. And despite the fact that there are space constraint in Singapore, we are able to free space for green and preserve those heritage. And this is the greatest excitement. It was just announced in last week, National Day. It is the Greater Southern Waterfront. In the next 10 years, when you go to Singapore, when the Keppel shipyard move, it will be the new playground in Singapore. So we constantly renew and while preserving the culture. So I will not finish everything, but these are some of the slides that adding value and not taking away the quality of experience is Bhutan has a policy of minimum charge per day. So for every day you pay minimum charge $250 per day. And $65 goes to the government, the rest pay for your accommodation and your experiences there. And it's very sustainable. In fact, they're going to increase it to $300. We want quality tourists, not just quantity. So those are the few things that are quickly. It's a beautiful destination. I use the Singapore dollars. It's an Indian rupee equivalent, so it's $1 to 551. These are the projects that I have overseen from 2009 to 2015, and I was sharing with you about when you build this, you create a heritage, you create a tourism site, and business will flourish. Okay, time's up. For those of you who go there, please ascend the Tiger's Nest. It is scalable. It's a very interesting place to be. This is the Bhutan Parliament. We spend a bit of time in the Parliament hearing what the politicians are saying and how we can help them to put that together, and pure happiness. So I'll just go very quickly. I trained the election department of Bhutan so that because we have some years of experience in that, this election commissioner, and this is the industry that I have started there to improve the quality. So I stay connected. Tourists will always want to come back because they want to know how you have progressed. Don't leave them, let them have good time in your country and send them back and forget you forever. Make sure you have that connectivity. Then you get them back all the time. Okay? I do multimedia training with the monks. So the monastery do that. The kids are our future. I've spent a lot of time with the kids. So do make sure they have that. These are the school children. I teach them photography so that they can capture the imagination and the beauty of the country. Okay, some photography sessions. Very quickly, I'll just go through. Just give me 2 minutes. These are some of the most beautiful photos that you can take. So this is the National Day of Bhutan. Some countries, when you have the National Day, you display your armory, your aircraft, your tanks, and your soldiers. In Bhutan, the king and the queen and the parliamentarian were dancing with them on the parade square. It provides the unity of people. You know? So that's that. The beauty of the country is the people. It's changing very fast. You see people wearing jeans now. Right? When I went there, they were all wearing the traditional go and kira. Plenty of natural products produced. This is something that people pay $37,000 US per kilo. It is the cordyceps. If you hear about it, it's more expensive than gold. Yeah, you pick it up. These worms grow into the plant, and people use it for health. Okay, so attractions. This is the Buddha that is being built, and it just completed recently. People use it for pilgrimage, touring. Okay, so very quickly go through some of these things. So I encourage you to think more deeply when you engage, when you develop your country, how long sustainable, how you can engage the community to work with you, make them the stakeholders as you progress with it. Okay, so with that, I will stop here, but you can, for the students and those interested, please ask for the slides, and you can have and I have my email in there, my phone, you can speak with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yap. May I call our second set of panelists on stage along with our moderator?
Okay, I'd like to invite the members from the audience to ask questions, if you have any, to our two panelists. Yes, please. You first and second, yes.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning to our guest speakers. I'm Julie Labarda, Tourism Management from University of Perpetual Health. So my question is for Attorney Arboladura.
She's not around anymore. Yeah, she already left, so she won't be able to join us in this session.
Okay. Next person.
Okay, so we have a...
Thank you.
Sorry, but you can ask the question, and then maybe, our panelists can also share some insights. Yes, kindly ask your question.
What do you, Manila having 8 tourism hubs now, what do you think is the top priority as far as heritage preservation is concerned, and why?
Okay, so we'll note that question for Attorney Sofia, but maybe in the case of Mayor Treñas, if you have actually some points that you'd like to share about Manila, places that you think should be, let's say, prioritized for tourism for the city of Manila?
It's very difficult for me to speak for Manila, but so far as Iloilo is concerned, I think we started early on creating a Heritage and Conservation Council, which is composed of private sector. And we started identifying the heritage buildings and houses in Iloilo City through the help of USAID in 2001. And after that, Iloilo City gave tax incentives for real property taxes for those who will renovate and restore their buildings. There should always be close coordination between the private sector and local government if we want to preserve our heritage. And if there is no close coordination, then it will be very difficult.
Thank you po.
Okay, so it's an institutional arrangement that would be critical for Manila's preservation of the sites that were presented by Attorney Sofia earlier. Okay, so we have another question from the
Twinkle, I'll
lady.
just make a quick response on
Eileen?
Manila.
Yeah, okay.
Because they had their consultative meeting with the private sector yesterday. So they are coming up with their tourism master plan. So it's too early to say what will be prioritized, how they will address it, and so on. But keep, you know that the mayor regularly sends an update. So I think you will also just be visiting his social media platforms and it will be there, just to speak very quick about that one.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So we have, actually, I saw a lady a while ago who raised her hand. Yes, please.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Rajala. I am from the Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners and also a consultant to the urban poor of the City way back, and I'm now with some students of the PATS Aeronautical College, tourism students. I'd like to ask, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the CAS, specifically the Program in International Studies, for coming up with an impressive panel of speakers. And since we have a lot of students here, I just wanted to ask the opinion of Mayor Reyes and Mr. Yap.
Mr. Yap.
Okay, what do we define? Because the topic is on cities and urban places and their readiness for tourism. How do we say that a certain city or urban area is ready? I was quite surprised when our charming speaker, Dr. Cortez, said that the Siargao is not as ready as Coron is. And we have to, I think every city has its unique readiness and offerings for their tourism attractions. So I'd like to ask the distinguished panel, what would, from your opinion, would define a city's readiness for tourism, taking into consideration their unique offerings, like if it's not nature tourism that they have,
Okay.
if it's not heritage tourism, like Muntinlupa, where do we go here for tourism?
So the elements of readiness, right? So maybe we can start with Mayor Trenyes and then Mr. Yap.
Well, first of all, I think you need to have the tourism sites. No? Otherwise, no one will go to your place. Second, you must have all the medical and medical preparedness. No? You must have the hospitals ready. In Iloilo City, we have several hospitals. Medical City is already there. Third, there must be disaster preparedness and response. Iloilo City is blessed. In less than 2 months, we already signed an agreement with Kevin Tan of Mega World to help out in equipments and capacity building for our Disaster Risk Reduction Management Office. Taiwan is also helping us in capacity building. You have to predict what possible things can happen to tourists, and the city must be prepared for this. I think Iloilo City is prepared. Iloilo City was just cited by Nambio as the 8th safest city in the ASEAN, and with Singapore as the first. And we are very happy. And I can say that Iloilo City is ready for the tourists.
Thank you, Mayor Trenes and Robin.
Right, I will address it from the commercial side of it. Number one, I think every city has its uniqueness. I think the development has to base on the uniqueness of the city. Whether it's prepared or not is debatable because there are people who like to go back to nature, to explore nature in its own rights. In the case of Singapore, we plan our city 30, 50 years ahead. And we constantly look at the evolving changes of consumer demand. If you've been to Singapore 20 years ago, you will not have the Marina Bay area. But we know competition is heating up. We have to create new interest to attract new investment and new visitors. Now in the case of Bhutan, because Singapore didn't have too much of a heritage for us to preserve, so we had to make way for urbanization and business. Whereas in the Bhutan, where they have a lot of land and they have a lot of heritage and culture, they carefully plan that, well, whilst we want tourism dollars, we want high value tourism dollars. We want high quality tourists. So in the progress of the tourism development, they deliberately preserve certain area to attract a certain group of visitors who want to go back to nature, go back to the environment. And the other aspect of it was to develop the historical, the religious, and tracking adventure tourism. So there's a lot for you to think about when you want to develop your tourism sector, is to identify which market you are looking for. In fact, one of the reasons why as a school we have just developed a university in Cambodia. And why would people say, why not Singapore? You're a Singapore company, why are you developing Cambodia? Because it's the closeness to China, it's along the Belt Road here, and a lot of Westerners want to study in Indochina about the history, cultures in Indochina. So when you look at development, you look at the overall, where's the target market, how are you going to attract them? And I think Philippines it's about time that you draw back those colonial people from Spain, Portugal to return, because I was sharing with Eileen yesterday why the Australians and New Zealanders go back to London, go back to UK every year, because there's that connectivity. Whereas here, you have the strong connectivity in the past with the Spanish. And it's about time to bring them over to showcase what you have in the Philippines that they have left behind. So to me, it's a very exciting time for you to look at the development of each of your cities to appeal to different market, different countries, and different tourists. And such a big country, you have opportunity to do that. We didn't have. Singapore is only, 728 square kilometers. So we are limited by space, but we still make sure that we evolve with time. And you've got to do that. And important is for you as a young people, your imagination, your development is only limited by your own imagination. And you've got to speak up, you've got to participate, and you've got to share with the world about what Philippines has to offer.
Okay, thank you for your responses. Now, any questions from this side of the room, please? Yes, please.
Good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Chandler Troyo Oranza from Beda College, Alabang. The question is...
Can you speak louder, please?
The question is, how do you make sure that the authenticity is valid despite the changes in the development of the product in a destination?
How do we ensure that authenticity is preserved or
is sustained?
Sustained, okay. So how do we ensure that authenticity of the place, the products is sustained
despite the changes in the development of the product?
Okay. Despite the changes that are happening or changes in the development.
Well, again, taking Singapore as an example, we have been lamenting that the government has torn down some of our heritage buildings to make way for development. In case of a country when you have limited land space, it's inevitable that you have to make a difficult choice. However, once you have done that, you have to give back to the community by bringing back the old charm. So if you have been to Singapore before, you would have noted that some of the central area and Chinatown area have been modernized. It's the most unrecognizable Chinatown in the whole world. You go to Chinatown, you don't know that's Chinatown because there's no green roof buildings. However, as we progress as a nation, as we have made road to success, you start to bring back the old charm and recreate what we have lost. So sometimes it's inevitable, you have to lose something in order to gain something. And to sustain it, there's a lot of willingness from the private sector to preserve that. And in the case of Bhutan, the sustainability is a very strong strategy that the government used to ensure that with the limited resources of the country, they ensure that they receive quality and expensive tourists so that they do not consume and not put back. So it depends on country to country. And in the Philippines, I'm sure in Manila, the way you treat it will be quite different from Iloilo, from Manila to Cebu to some other cities, because your unique local flavors are different. And the way you preserve it, it's also quite different. So I think it's a very broad question, but I think the willingness of investors, local government, to help to prolong whatever uniqueness that you have and rejuvenate it. More important thing, as we grow older, we need to put more foundation and lift our face. So same with destination.
Okay. Thank you so much for your response, Mayor Treñas.
Insofar as Iloilo is concerned, we were able to approve an ordinance way back for the preservation of heritage buildings. And that is the reason why in the old part of the city, the old buildings cannot be torn down and new buildings built. There is a provision in our ordinance that the building permits have to go through the City Heritage and Conservation Council. If the Heritage Council will not allow the renovation because it will tear down the building, then the property owner cannot do so. Another case in point, SM purchased one of the oldest mansions in Iloilo. I think initially they planned to tear it down and put up a mall, but because of the public outcry, SM decided to restore the building and made it as their showcase for Kultura, where they offer for sale native products. The new development is in the new portion of Iloilo City, but in the old portion of Iloilo City, development is strictly monitored by the Heritage Council. And this is further strengthened by the Republic Act, which I was able to pass through Congress when I was a member of the House of Representatives, which identifies the specific areas in Iloilo City as heritage sites and must be restored. Mandated CHESA, the Department of Tourism, the National Museum, to spend funds from the national government to restore the buildings and those places.
Thank you, Mayor Treñas. Question?
Yeah, is it afternoon already?
Yes.
It's already, yeah. Yeah, I'm Ernie Teston. I'm from the Department of Tourism. My question is directed to the guy from Singapore. I've been to Singapore, but I've never been to
Mr.
Bhutan.
Yap? Okay, Mr.
Yes.
Yap.
My question actually refers to, I've encountered some readings that Bhutan has actually pioneered the concept of gross national happiness. Now, in relation to our country, we have been using It's More Fun in the Philippines simply because we are fun-loving people. Now, how has Bhutan helped actually conceptualize that concept in terms of promoting the destination or the country itself?
Right. Now, it all started with the third king of Bhutan, when he, 1974, when they opened it up to tourism, it has to have a common message. And it's to the royal decree that the message to the world is we need to measure economic development by the happiness index of the people, because otherwise there's no point having economic development where people feel misery. And our responsibility is to make sure that our citizens are well fed, happy, and that's the fundamental thought when they develop that message. As a result, there's one thing that they have done very well is consistency. In fact, recently there was talk about changing this gross national happiness message to something else that is more commercial. It was shot down because when you have consistency, the recall value is very strong. And what I lament about some destination is they keep changing the tagline, they keep changing what the destination is all about. And I think it's important to reinforce. I came from Singapore Airlines for 7 years. They haven't changed the tagline of a great way to fly. So when you talk about a Singapore Airline, it's a great way to fly, nothing else. And whether it's changing time, we kept to it and we enhance it with beautiful images. You need to enhance with recent images. So to me, the message was then decreed down to the parliament. They have 3 parliament elections. They embrace it. They filter it down to the people, to the local community. So we sing in one language and we are all on the same page in terms of preserving, promoting the gross national happiness. So that is a very powerful thing that we all must remember, because as human beings we keep changing mind. Today we look at this, tomorrow we look at that, and the worst of all, we go some countries and we thought that was a great idea, we copy and we import and implement locally, and what a disaster, because we are different. Something that works in Denmark cannot work in the Philippines or Singapore. So you need to embrace that. So for them, it's the consistency of communicating with people. So I hope I answered that question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So one last question. Yes, please.
Good day, everyone, and also to our speakers. So I'm Carnal Fane, tourism student of University of Perpetua. So my question is for City Mayor of Iloilo, Mr. Readiness. So Iloilo City is known as the urban tourism center, having a rich heritage tourism. What do you consider as the primary challenge being faced by Iloilo City as far as heritage tourism is considered, and how do you deal with it?
Sorry, I cannot hear very well.
What are the challenges faced by Iloilo in terms of the heritage tourism product?
On how do you deal with it?
The challenges really in heritage tourism is the owners of the heritage buildings and houses. Not all of them are well off and can maintain these buildings and houses. The challenge is really for the city to be able to continue to dialogue with them, provide the necessary incentives so that they will maintain these buildings. Just like last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago, Senator Frank and I had met with the National Historical Commission together with the Heritage Council on how we can further enhance our old city district, which we call the Calyarial. And there's a lot of challenges that we have to face. We have the sidewalk vendors, which I ordered to be cleared starting next week. There are old buildings which have not been renovated due to lack of business activities in the area. And there are informal settlers which we will have to relocate. The city provides relocation site for informal settlers who will be displaced. We provided relocation site for 1,000 displaced informal settlers when the Esplanade was first started, and we continue to do so. These are several challenges which we face and which we have to overcome as we promote Iloilo City to be a heritage destination.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor Treñas, for the response. So at this point, I'd like to thank on behalf of the Tourism Knowledge Center, our two panelists, Mayor Jerry Treñas and Mr. Robin Yap, for joining us in this session on urban renewal for cities for tourism growth. Thank you very much. Okay, so at this point, I would like to provide a synthesis of the presentations this morning and also the discussions we had in the two panel sessions. So I think I'd like to use the acronym TRIPS, T-R-I-P-S, to highlight the salient points that we all learned from today. Well, the first is T, which can actually stand for a number of things, but in this case, I'd like to mention two. First is target. So in the various presentations, it was highlighted that vision is very important for even initial tourism growth and development, or even for renewal, coming, let's say, from a period of stagnation to a period of recovery. So their target is very important. But more than the target is the trajectory. There has to be like a timeline. Okay, when do we aim to achieve this vision? Is it destination as presented, for example, for some of the cities, destination 2030. Singapore is planning actually 50 years in advance. Iloilo now is implementing a new program called Wheels of the City because it's going to emphasize more on destination infrastructure. So what would be all these timelines for all the cities that we have in the country? If all of the cities, how many do we have? More than 140 cities in the Philippine archipelago. What if all of them actually invest for urban tourism? So what are the targets, and what is really the trajectory? Because the trajectory could actually lead to either growth or even stagnation and decline. So that's very crucial. R for resiliency. That's emphasized across all the presentations. We need to be able to recover. We need to be able to bounce back. And there are very critical elements in order to achieve resiliency. And I would like to mention these two critical elements with the use of the third letter, which is I. The first is institutions. According to Douglas North, the Nobel Prize winner for economics, institutions actually make markets more efficient. They lower monitoring costs. They lower transaction costs. In other words, it's not always the case that free markets work perfectly. Okay, there will always be what we call failures. There could always be setbacks. So institutions are very crucial. And institutions create what we call the system of the next I, which is incentives. Incentives actually shape behavior of people because incentives simply define what we call the rules of the game. Earlier, Ms. Lee mentioned about incentives provided, let's say, to investors, whether in the form of fiscal or non-fiscal incentives. institutions were highlighted by our speakers. Mayor Trenes highlighted the creation of the Heritage Conservation Council of Iloilo as an institution that actually provide incentives that shape the behavior of the owners of heritage houses, of buildings, heritage structures in the city. And even in the case of the cities that were mentioned in the ranking presented by Mr. David during the first presentation, the provision of all these other elements that would make the destination resilient, infrastructure, what else, sanitation, security, order, they all depend on the nature of institutions that we create. So if you want to shape behavior of people towards development, towards a trajectory towards growth and sustainable development, we need these institutions to create those incentives. Now, the next is P. And for P, I think I'd like to mention two Ps. The first is policies. And policies are very crucial because they set the direction. You may have an institutional arrangement, you may have a council for heritage preservation, for promoting, let's say, gross national happiness and the like. But if it's not articulated in a policy that we can articulate, that we could verbalize, that we could speak in our own language, that we could assimilate and live with, then those institutions will not really matter. Now, the other P is people, and this is very much emphasized. Development should be for the people and by the people. Building a heritage structure actually is a way of giving back to the people by creating jobs through the investments. And that was the emphasis in the second panel on urban renewal. It's okay to preserve, it's fine to preserve all these structures because the ultimate objective is not really to preserve that building per se, for all its aesthetics and beauty, but it's really to generate the investments in order to provide jobs. And again, eventually lead to a level of national happiness, which is actually a measure beyond what we usually use, which is the gross domestic product. Okay, it doesn't measure, our really improvements in overall standards of living. Then the last is S. In S, and this is where each one of us actually plays a very crucial role, S can stand for systems. Systems are interconnected networks, and each one of us here is part of that network. I'm sure you're familiar with telecommunications network, internet the network. In the network, there are various nodes. Okay? The nodes sometimes may malfunction, but overall, if the nodes are very strong, because we share best practices, we share knowledge. As students, you share your research, faculty members share research. We in the industry, we share research and knowledge. Over time, we could actually make development more sustainable, because that is how actually civilizations prospered across time, right? When knowledge was actually shared. And that is how the second economic revolution came about. The economic revolution where we saw the marriage of science and technology. So the knowledge was not just kept anymore in shelves of classrooms, but they were actually eventually distributed and shared to people. And that is how we could actually be able to contribute to the next generation. In our case, our children's children. In your case, for the young people here, when you get married, your children and grandchildren in the future. And that's where the Tourism Knowledge Center actually comes in, to help build these networks of students, faculty, researchers, and industry practitioners, so that we could actually work together in order to achieve the last S, which is the standard. Because sustainable tourism is a standard in itself. So if we make sustainable tourism the standard, the benchmark in everything we do, then it is not going to be a very elusive concept anymore. So sustainable tourism is more of transferring to the next generation what we actually are able to enjoy today. So we hope that the Tourism Knowledge Center will be able to contribute more and more to this kind of, or to this development and upholding of the standards. So with that, I'd like to end. So that's the synthesis of the presentations that we actually all enjoyed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rodolfo, for your insightful synopsis of today's forum. I would now like to call on stage Ms. Eileen Clemente, Chairman and President of Raja Travel Corporation, Mr. Alan Canizal, Executive Director of the Raja Travel Corporation's Tourism Knowledge Center, and Dean Dr. Ryan Sikat, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences of San Beda, Alabang. May I call on stage our speakers to accept the plaques of appreciation. Mr. Nigel David. Ms. Norzalina Lim. Dr. Michael Angelo Cortez. Honorable Mayor Jerry Treñas. And Mr. Robin Yap. May we call everyone center stage for the group photo op. Let us now welcome on stage Mr. Pepin Earl Perido, BA IST first year student of San Beda College, Alabang, joined by his sister Patricia Maurice Charlotte Perido, BA CMS graduate of San Beda College, Alabang, and currently City Government of Muntinlupa Public Information Office Administrative Officer, to serenade us to a whole new world.
I can show you the world, shiny, shimmering, splendid. Tell me, princess, now when did you last let your heart decide? I can open your eyes, take you wonder by wonder, over, sideways, and under, on a magic carpet ride. A whole new world, a new fantastic point of view. No one to tell us no, or where to go, or say we're only dreaming.
A whole new world, a dazzling place I never knew. But when I'm way up here, it's crystal clear that now I'm in a whole new world with you.
Now I'm in a whole new world with you.
Unbelievable sights, indescribable feeling, soaring, tumbling, feeling through an endless diamond sky. A whole new world.
Don't you dare close your eyes.
100,000
Hold your breath, it
things to
gets
see.
better.
I'm like a shooting star. I've gone so far, I can't go back where I used to
When you
be.
are, new horizons
Every
to
moment
pursue.
better.
I'll chase them anywhere. There's time to spare. Let me share this whole new world with you. A whole new world. That's where we'll be. Until we reach for you and me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that performance. To cap off our event, may I call on stage Dr. Andres Ignacio C. San Mateo Jr., Vice President of San Beda College, Alabang.
Good afternoon. After hearing our 6 speakers today, I had a reflection in terms of the proceedings of this particular conference. For us to be able to have a successful program in tourism and travel, it is important that we take into consideration the first item, which is people. The Philippines has a lot to offer, but nothing goes beyond how good the Filipinos are. If ever there is something that we can sell throughout the world, it is our people that will make the difference. Second is, it is not possible for tourism and travel to prosper without the collaboration of the private and public sector. The government must support it, most especially the private sector. No program in travel and tourism will be successful without the collaboration of the private and the government sector. Third, which is the last, this is one thing that is beautiful in tourism. There are certain things that change, but there are certain things that has to be preserved. It is only important that we can move forward if we know where we begin. And that is where travel and tourism will play an important role. Allow me to congratulate Rajala Travel Corporation, the Tourism and Knowledge Center, Yusek Anizal, Ms. Eileen, Clemente, for coming up together with the College of Arts and Sciences of San Beda College, Alabang, Dr. Ryan Sikat, the Dean, the Vice Dean, Dr. Michi Aquino, congratulations. And also, I would like to thank our speakers for taking time, despite of your busy schedule, to share the knowledge that you have and your programs and your experiences to the leaders of our future in this particular field, the college students of the different schools represented in this particular conference. I hope that this will not be the last, but it is a beginning of something, and it is something that we will support and continuously do here in San Beda College, Alabang. As we say, and if we end any activity here in San Beda College, Alabang, we offer everything to the Lord. That is why we say that in all things, God may be glorified. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. San Mateo. May I now ask everybody to stand for the San Beda hymn as a way of thanking our sponsors.
Herald the Bedans coming, may their fellowship never cease. Molded by both undaunted men of prayer, work and peace. Through the carefree days of our childhood and the visions of our youth, you give us the wisdom of Benedict's soul, faith in God and love of the truth. When we encounter trials and hardships, we shall give you honor and faith. For nothing but this shall our loyalty clear to our alma mater's name. Bring out the challenges, we'll win them all, and fear neither fire nor blood. And as we'll answer the clarion call, for San Beda, our country, and God.
That concludes today's event. Thank you all for being with us today. Please visit our post-event survey website, which will be sent to your emails after the event.